This is the B1KER Bar Podcast, episode 134. And we have a great guest today. We have Kmetz from Skills with Phil. If you guys aren't familiar with him, I don't know what rock you've been hiding under as far as the YouTube space goes. But if you're just a podcast listener, maybe you're not familiar. He runs a pretty popular, one of the most popular probably mountain bike YouTube channels out there. One of the OG creators. He's been around for a long time. So always lots of good things to talk with him about. But before we get started, the first thing I want to say to all of you is thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate all of you that are here. And those of you guys that help sponsor the channel by going over there on Patreon and doing your thing over there, I really appreciate all of you. If any of you guys want to help out there, just swing by patreon.com, type in B1KER, B1KER, and you'll find it over there. Helps throw some beer into the fridge, helps keep the camera gear from dying on me. Had to buy the new GoPro 11, so those things keep the channel afloat, and I really appreciate everybody that does that. It really means a lot. I have for a long time, go back and forth on wanting to get channel sponsors. And the main reason that I tend to always shy away from that situation is because I really like just being sponsored by the subscribers. And that really gives me the freedom to do whatever I want and not feel like I can, like I have to make a video that has an opinion that is maybe I wouldn't say that I would ever give an opinion that's not mine, but I would think that it's harder to be 100% honest with how you feel about something. You don't want to get on and just like totally poop on something, so you probably curb it a little bit. It's understandable. Anyways, so outside of that, if you guys want something for free, just hit subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast, you can hit it on your set it to your downloads and it comes in there. And if you want to help out for free, swing by Apple Podcasts, write a review. That's always good. It's super fun to go in there and read them. And you can also swing by Facebook or Instagram, give me a follow over there. And that's about the way it goes. So we're going to go ahead and bring Phil back on and get started. How's it going, Phil?
Hey, how are you doing?
Oh man, like I was saying, it has been hectic for me lately, and do you know how sometimes in life that it seems like you're always like, oh man, next week is going to be chill, and then I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to do, right? And for whatever reason, next week keeps coming and being more like just as busy as the last week. But for some reason, I've just been like completely, like, I guess lying to myself every week for like the last month. Like, it's going to get better. I'm waiting.
Oh, man. Sorry, I just got distracted. I think I couldn't tell if my computer fan turned on or if it just started downpouring outside. I think it's raining outside. So.
Oh, yeah. Where are you living? You're up in Vermont, right?
I'm in Vermont now. Yeah.
How you go ahead.
Last time we talked, I was in Vermont, but I wasn't in this house.
Right. I think you were still in school, huh?
No, I was right after. It wasn't too far after school. We, so this, I think when we talked class was like right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, wow, man. It's like a lifetime ago, huh?
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know if I even talked about this on the podcast, but we had just put, kind of the paperwork to, get this house. So like, I can't remember if I announced that we were moving into a house on that podcast or not.
I don't remember, honestly. It's been so long. But how has that experience been? I mean, being a first-time home buyer?
Honestly, because of my wife, it went extremely smooth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always difficult being when you work for yourself and you have to go to the bank and have them do the underwriting. That was interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, so what's this YouTube thing? And they start questioning every detail of like, how many employees do you have? Like, how many people are dependent on your income, yada, yada. It's like, just me.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that. I mean, you get not a W-2, but you get, kind of, man, I'm trying to think about that, like tax wise, like it's probably a little bit harder to show your income because I mean, I guess you could show what you're making every month and that it's pretty much the same, or
Yeah, so what I ended up just sending them is through like QuickBooks. It gives you like a profit loss statement,
Hmm.
and like it has like all the details of like where everything's coming from, where it's going, and we just sent them over 2 years worth of that stuff, and that seemed to answer all of the questions they had.
Right on. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one to think about, and it could be so it could fluctuate so much, like if you had a like month that you weren't, just didn't make some good videos or whatever, you know what I mean? And you could have one that like just blew up and all of a sudden, boom, you got this huge paycheck, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it also helped that I think that year was the first year that had come off having a full-time sponsor
Uh-huh.
or full-time sponsors. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was like a second year. I can't quite remember. The details are fuzzy now. But
Uh-huh.
that income definitely helped kind of give a little bit more legitimacy to like what I was doing.
Right, right. Are you still carrying any sponsors or are you just
Yep.
completely like YouTube?
Yeah, no, I still carried the same. So I've been working with the same three sponsors basically since the beginning of when I officially got sponsored, which is GT, Noble Wheels, and Onyx Hubs.
Oh, right on, man.
There was a fourth in there at one point, but that was just a 1 year deal, and then we didn't renew a contract.
Uh-huh. And you had those sponsors as a professional writer or as a YouTuber?
No, I never had. So in terms of like real sponsorship, I never had real sponsorship as a like professional writer. It was
Mm-hmm.
always like, hey, here's some free product.
So like
Um,
flow kind of stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so depending on what, like, when you're 16 years old, like that's sweet. But when
Yeah,
you're,
right.
27 and you have bills to pay, it helps, but
Yeah.
you know, like at some point you need a little bit more, which is why you see the careers of so many racers just kind of like fizzle out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been working with GT, Noble, and Onyx since 2019, and it's like that's real sponsorship. It just kind of like alleviates some headache that you get through YouTube and like not knowing how like a certain video is going to do and whatnot. So
Right.
it kind of helps, if you think of it in terms of a stock portfolio, it's diversification.
Yeah, 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 totally. How did you go about getting your sponsorships? Did they come to you or?
So, yes and no. These were companies that I had been in touch with a little bit through various means, but this is also back when a lot of us were working with Paul,
Mm-hmm.
and he, coming from Pink Bike, he was, much more knowledgeable about the like marketing space, the sponsorship space, knowing
Mm-hmm.
what to ask for and all that stuff. So he was our agent for that year, and he is, essentially responsible for a lot of us getting the sponsorships that we have now, or at least setting like kind of like the base of like, hey, this is how much you should be asking, or this is like
Yeah.
how like what companies you should be looking for, or the things you should be offering. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because I think that's one of the things that people that get into YouTube, I mean, struggle with the most. They just have no clue like what is acceptable for a sponsorship. So it really makes it tough as a beginner because you don't even know what a baseline is.
Yeah, I had a hard time with that in like racing too, which is why I didn't really, which is why I stopped racing professionally and then ended up doing YouTube because like, well, I don't know, like to me, like $3,000 seemed like a lot of money at the time, and it still is, but at the time, like it seemed like a lot more, and so I was like, is that something like you can ask for? Like I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, it wasn't until I started, meeting some pro riders and had some more like kind of off the camera kind of conversations that I even had an idea of what the ballpark was. I wouldn't honestly, I wouldn't have guessed that it is anywhere close to what it is. Like you were saying a minute ago, like asking for $3,000 would sound like a big deal, like so. Um, I
I
mean,
think it
you
gets
go ahead.
I think it gets easier once you actually have bills to pay
Yeah,
and you actually have like um you have things that you need to like that you're responsible for. So, when you have no responsibilities, you'll take anything. because
Right.
like, that's you'll take anything and you'd be happy with that. But once you get like real bills, you're like, yeah, man, I can't quit my job and live off that paycheck. I'm sorry. So it kind of
Right.
actually in some ways makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from there. So you've been working with GT for quite some time, and they also have Hans Ray as one of their riders that they've had forever. Have you done anything like kind of collaboration with them?
No, the only thing we did was like when I first got on board at Sea Otter, we did this little collaboration together. Actually, I should say, and during the pandemic, we did these fun little videos kind of remotely that we all sent to GT, and they did all the editing and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
But that's like as much as I've really like talked with him, like which it's kind of a bummer because like once I got sponsored with like by GT, did Sea Otter, and then kind of the pandemic hit, and then like
Hmm.
travel even last year was a little bit like
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to like seems like this year is kind of coming back. I know Sea Otter definitely was busier than the one it was the year before, but it didn't quite feel like the way it was like pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
go ahead.
also last year was the year that like they had almost two in a row because they had the one in the fall and then the one in the
Yeah.
spring. So it was kind of a
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, they did that with the Sedona too, where it was like November and then again in March. So I think a lot of people were like, some people went in November because it had been a while, and then they were just like, I don't need to go right back like a couple months later. So
I also
yeah.
feel in many ways that the Sedona Bike Festival has kind of taken a little bit of the thunder. I mean, like Sea Otter is a whole bike industry, and Sedona is more of just like a mountain bike specific and almost more niche.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of the mountain bike companies seem to. Um, I think everyone just likes Sedona a lot more.
Yeah. I think Sedona, like the key to Sedona is just the amount of riding that's right there, whether you're like riding straight from the event or like within just like that short little, like a short drive in a few minutes every direction is like amazing ride. So it's really hard to think of another place that would have that kind of, trail access to that much stuff.
Yeah, maybe Whistler. I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's maybe another, but like at least Sedona is like it's just like the scenery is like there's not many other places like it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was thinking there's a lot of trails in the Bend area, but it's definitely not something that would be laid out the way that like the Sedona Bike Fest is. You've been to a bunch of different fests, so would you say that Sedona is probably the next biggest one compared to Sea Otter?
I don't think I've been to actually that many.
Yeah.
Because Sedona, King, Numba Fest, and w- the Santos Fat Tire Festival in Ocala, Florida, and maybe like one or two others.
Hmm.
I mean, I think like one more bigger ones would like it's almost not even like a bike specific one is Crankworks. Well, I mean, it's bike specific, but it's almost more of a
That's more to the like the race and the like kind of the slope style stuff or whatever.
yeah. I mean,
Like
like
watching the pros, basically.
yeah. I mean, Crankworks is just a whole like it's a well run machine like that. Like it's a really cool event.
Uh-huh.
Even if you're just like even if you're not competing, it's a fun time because I mean there are a bunch of vendors set up throughout the town that you can like any other festival, but there's not really any demos like that. So if you're going to demo a bike, it's not the place for that.
Right. Um, have you been to like any outer bike or anything like that?
No, I've never, there's a lot of like core industry events that never seemed to appeal to me. And like at the time, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that's how you get sponsorships is you go to those events and you network. Gee, I
Right.
wonder why I never got sponsored.
I hear you. Yeah, no, that's definitely like for me. I mean, I don't necessarily go for looking for sponsorship, but a lot of the guests that I have, that more like industry kind of company guests and stuff like that, that all comes from going to Sea Otter or Sedona and basically just collecting a bunch of cards and then following up with people all year long. So it definitely helps. I haven't been to any of the East Coast festivals, and just recently I had gone home and was having some people talk to me about some different events back there, and I was thinking that I should maybe try to go to one of those. Or I've heard that Florida one mentioned a bunch of times by people, and then somebody was telling me about one in Pennsylvania that's pretty big.
I think that's Dirt Fest.
Yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah,
I think there's two of them. There's one in Pennsylvania, and then there might be another in West Virginia. I think they're usually like within a few weeks.
Yeah. It was I haven't ridden, so I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I learned how to mountain bike there. So, it's super rocky and rooty and whatnot. And I kind of thought that that's why, like, today, this type of riding that I really enjoy is that super technical kind of stuff, more so than maybe the flow stuff. So when I went back on this trip, it was actually the first time that I've mountain biked in Pennsylvania in like 30 years. And holy cow, it's like the tech there really was humbling to say the least. And you've traveled a bunch, I'd say globally. What do you think about the tech there in Vermont?
It's funny, like every state has its own kind of tech, and it's all slightly different, especially in the east, like Northeast, and it's all very it's all difficult in different ways.
Yeah.
Vermont is actually like we have a lot more dirt than some of our other northeastern counterparts, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people like coming here. And so a lot of our tech is a little bit more to do with the fact that there's like it's more predominantly rooty and wet. Whereas if you like go to like New Hampshire, there's a lot more roots and rocks mixed together. You go to like New York and into Pennsylvania, it gets more into like shaly rocks and stuff, which is like a whole nother beast. So like every single one of like the states, because of just like the geography, is totally different.
Yeah. It definitely was. It was definitely more challenging than I remembered, to put it that way. And I'm sure, trails have evolved a lot since when I first was riding back there. Mostly what we were riding was hiking trails. And nowadays, you have purpose-built mountain bike trails. And not to like toot my own horn, but I don't wreck very often. You know what I mean? Like it, you'll have a little mishap here and there, but it doesn't seem to be, I'm more of a cautious rider. So that type of thing doesn't happen very often. And I like had two pretty serious like OTBs in the time that I was there, like in the matter of one ride. It was like, holy shit, man. Like it definitely made me realize that like maybe my skill set, it wasn't tuned for riding in that kind of environment anymore. You know what I mean?
Maybe you're just having an off day.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows, right? It's just I even noticed going through the woods though that like to track where the trail was, that I was not being able to like capture it as quickly as I would like riding out here is where I ride most of the time, and having all that leaf scatter all over the place, it like camouflaged the trail more, and it made me realize that it's definitely it's like a skill set that you have to have for that area.
It's interesting that you say that, because I found that the place that comes to mind was Sedona. Like trying to ride trails out in Sedona was really tricky because there was none of that. There were no trees flanking the side of the trail. That you were kind of relying on like the blazes painted on the rock, or some of the ducks or whatever. Like, but it was really strange to look ahead and see where you're going, because sometimes it just didn't make intuitive sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there too. I wasn't really thinking about that, where you're either looking for like cairns or just like where in the rock to kind of figure out where you're going. But yeah, for whatever reason, being in the woods back there, it was definitely different, where I had to really think about how my wheels were hitting the rocks in particular, because like where we have rocks out here, everything's so dry. So if anything, it's like a granite-y kind of rock. So it's like if your tire hits it, you really grab it well. Where over there, it was just they slide sideways and turn your handlebars and do all kinds of funky stuff, you know.
I mean, I think where in Pennsylvania were you?
I was in like kind of in Caledonia area, kind of in the middle of the state.
Okay, so was the dirt kind of red?
No, it was a little bit more like regular brownish color, just a lot of rock there, a lot of that shaly kind of rock you were talking
Okay,
about.
even that sometimes can like have a high like clay content out there. And
Yeah.
like find that the rocks are pretty smooth and like don't offer much grip.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely was noticing that. So it shot me around a bit, you know. So it'll be a fun edit. It'll be a fun video to edit and see what actually turns out. It was that one particular day. You ever have those rides where you go out to film and it just seems like everything goes wrong?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it was one of those. The first run, I like basically filmed, you know, whatever I was talking about going up the hill. And you know, that's just like kind of filler. It's not going to be the main part of the video, right? So I do the downhill run and get to the bottom, and I realized somehow I switched my GoPro to slow-mo mode. So basically that whole run was just worthless. And then the second one I was just wiping out all over the place. And then the third one, I tried to beat the sun, and let's just say the sun came down way faster than I got down the hill.
Did you make it out?
Well, I'm still here, but it was definitely I have never ridden my mountain bike with my iPhone in one hand using that as a light before, but now I can't say that anymore.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Have you had one of those disaster videos like where you're trying to record like that?
I've had videos where I start off and I I just like I get into the video or into the day, I'm just like not feeling it.
Hmm.
And like I try to push through it and like and just something like goes wrong and like at some point it's just like I just know my energy level like isn't there because like I try to make my videos as real as possible, like as true to self.
Hmm.
But sometimes like I have off days that I know it's like, man, like this this is just gonna be one of those videos where it's like a real doozy, like really like low energy, like nothing's really happening, kind of like
Hmm.
um and so I it was actually pretty recently that ended up scratching one of those videos, and it was at an event. And it was just like, and that ended up being a bit too busy at the event, which is usually pretty good. Like at Crankworks, like I've had a really good luck, like getting really good content there because like there's a lot of people you're running into, talking to new people. But this ended up just being um, the trailers are super packed. So like we're just leapfrogging the same groups over and over. Um, and the trails weren't my favorite, so I ended up just scrapping that video and
Yeah.
trying to figure something out for the next day.
It's always hard to get yourself to that spot where you're you're putting a lot of time into these edits, you know, and you're a couple hours in and you come to a point where you just realize this isn't going to work, you know, and you just have to let it go. And that's always hard to do. Usually what I'll try to do then is like, maybe I can just wrap it up at that and give it to people on Patreon and just say, hey, this is as far as this one's getting. You guys, here you go. It's not, nobody else is going to see it. So, you know, and then it's kind of a little something. Then you don't feel like you totally wasted it, you know?
Yeah, you know what? I've accepted the fact that I pretty much always ride with a camera now. Like there's,
Mm-hmm.
there's rides where like I call them after work rides where I go with Haley and just kind of putt. Or we don't putt, but like we go for just after work ride. I have a
Yeah,
half
yeah.
shell on, But then there's like weekend rides, and I've just like accepted that I just wear a camera at all times because like it's just kind of nice to be able to like, even if I never post any of that content, just look back on um like how like the trails have changed at different bike
Yeah.
parks year to year. Um and for me, as someone who has a hard time remembering names, and like a lot of people know my name, just remembering people, like it helps
Yeah.
me a lot. Just kind of like, I'm pretty sure I recorded them saying their name, and I can
Yeah.
kind of go back and reference that. So like for me, that's super helpful. It's like a
Yeah.
dash cam.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I've also noticed that, at least for me in the last year, I've really started using footage from old rides a lot more. So I have like, I'll know like mentally, oh, I have some drone footage from that spot, or hey, while I'm telling this story on this new video, I mentioned sea otter, and I can show like a little clip of it while I'm talking about it, and where before it was every video, the video that was used in it was only recorded for that video. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I've started doing quite a bit of that too, and for similar reasons. It's just like you never know when that really boring shot of you just riding on a road getting to the trailhead is going to come in handy.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's crazy. I used to not even care with whether or not like that stuff, like I used to say, oh, if I lost all my old footage, I wouldn't even care. And now I've definitely gone through the process of making sure I have like backups and redundancy and all that stuff, because I'm like, I see the value in it now. What's your creative process like? Do you have the idea for the video, or do you shoot the video and then have like come up the idea in editing?
I mean, lately I've gone to what I call more of a documentary style,
Hmm.
where um, I found for myself the videos that do the best are the videos that are the most authentic to a day at a bike park. So there's no planning, just kind of, I mean, apart from like which bike park I'm going to go to, which I
Hmm.
sometimes literally decide the day of.
Hmm.
Like some of my most popular videos were like the Windrock, Tennessee video. That video I decided like in the morning, yeah, man, let's go there. And
Yeah.
that's one of my most popular videos right now. So my creative process is, there is none anymore. There used to be some,
Uh-huh.
especially with the skill stuff, but now that I'm more doing kind of POV stuff, um, it's it's a serendipity of the day that makes something so interesting. You could go to the same bike park 5 times, and out of the 5 days, you're gonna have five complete different stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you're kind of moving to POV, where it seems like a lot of people on YouTube are moving away from it. What do you think that like makes you stand apart, or do you think that you just have enough audience that it doesn't matter?
No, for me, I really struggled with um being able to put out content on a regular basis.
Hmm.
And there was like a time on YouTube where if you didn't post a video for months, like your channel like had committed suicide. Like
Yeah.
and so I think you can, with the algorithm, you can get away with that a little bit more now.
Hmm.
But for me, it's like, if you kind of look at my how many videos I've posted compared to a lot of like the other big creators, I actually had relatively few videos.
Hmm.
And I felt like, if you look at all of those videos as like a way for someone to get to your channel, I had very few like doors to my channel.
Hmm.
So I essentially wanted to like kind of go back and like create a backlog of videos of stuff that people tend to really like anyway. Because like all of my comments like on some of my skills videos are like, oh, we prefer the POV stuff, like some of the building stuff. Oh, we prefer the POV stuff, and it's like, well, I'm not going to argue with that. If you guys like really like that, it's not too difficult for me to make.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy riding my bike and interacting with people. But it got to a point with the skill videos that was just like really hard to like. I don't want to be a broken record. There's only so many skills you can teach, and
Hmm.
after a certain point, you just sound like you're just repeat. Like, I'll use GMBN as like an example where they're kind of doing the same video over and over and over.
Hmm.
And I don't blame them because, like, you can always explain something a little bit different, but a lot of
Right.
this stuff is kind of the same.
How to manual 2023.
Exactly. How to manual on a 26-inch, how to manual on a 27.5, how to manual on a 29er, how to manual
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
mullet bike.
yeah.
And for a while, like when we first moved into the property, I was doing a little bit more hands-on building stuff, but I just get so like in tune to like a building project that a video would start taking 1 month to make. And
Hmm.
like, the next project would take even longer and longer. And like, before I knew it, like I hadn't released a video for like 2 months. And people were
Yeah,
like, are you still making videos? And so for me, like, um, my like, this is in the middle of a pandemic. My mental health
yeah,
was kind of struggling. Like there was a lot of things going on. And I was like, you know what? Like we're going to kind of go back to the basics and do something I can do on a repeatable basis. And then
mhm,
we'll go from there.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of what happened to me with why I started doing the little biker short videos where I do like a 90-second review on things.
Yep.
And my idea was kind of just, when you stop on the side of the trail and you ask your buddy if he likes his pedals, he doesn't talk to you for 15 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like this, yes, this, no, and buy them if you like them, right? And but it was the same thing. It's like I can go out, I can record 15 of them in like 2 hours, and I can release that content like once a week while I'm getting around to the longer content video where, just like what you said, like it's like I can like spend my time on creating that, and I don't feel bad about, hey, nothing's been posted for a while.
Yeah. I think for me, the other like big thing is if you go back to my channel, like from the start, it's been all over the place in terms of
Hmm.
like what content I've been like posting. So to be honest, this year will be kind of the first year that I've consistently posted a video almost every single week the whole year.
Oh wow, good job, dude.
Because like in the previous years, like I would go like, you know, a long period of time without posting a video, like in the middle of the summer when people are
Yeah,
expecting a lot of videos, and it's like, I just want to ride
yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is like my content changed like a ton. Like, sometimes it was skills videos, sometimes it was like top 10 videos, sometimes it was a product review. So it's kind of like a smorgasbord and like all over the place. And
Hmm.
I really don't enjoy doing review videos of any kind.
Yeah,
I don't like talking about stuff.
yeah.
It's weird. Like I can have a conversation with my friend and geek out about stuff, but trying
Hmm.
to make a video about the same stuff, I see the questions like in the comment sections, like, and I try to answer those as I'm recording it, and I just like my mind's going in 500 different directions, and I'm stumbling over my words. I'm like, I'm not having fun anymore. I'm just trying to do damage control.
Yeah. Yeah. I also hate doing review videos, and but I guess in my mind it's like kind of known, like views, like reviews get views, because people are looking for something to do with that product, right? And for me, I would always get stuck like over analyzing. I need to have all these awesome B-roll shots like Trail Features does, and these other guys get all these like beautiful shots of the product, and I would just like paralyze myself by trying to record this amazing video. And I think for me then the 90-second thing was like, hey, I can get some review videos out there and be able to just like spit it out real quick and be done with it.
Yeah, yeah. So I watched the one on the you just got a small chainsaw.
Oh yeah, 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 I use that one.
How
That
you
one
liking
was,
that thing?
dude, that thing's like, honestly, I never had a chainsaw before, and that thing is so rad. Like I spent the whole year before that building with a handsaw,
Hmm.
and it was like I came to the 21st century, man. It was like, holy crap, dude, you can cut this tree down in seconds. you know
I had never used a chainsaw until we bought our property, and then once we started doing some like trail work, we had like
uh-huh.
this giant maple that I knew I was gonna have to um like cut through, and like because there was a windstorm before we bought the house, so there's like a ton of trees like in the woods that were like all falling over. And
Hmm.
it was really scary, like, especially at
Yeah.
first. And I was coming, like, using a gas saw, so it was, like, really loud, like, I didn't grow up with, like, small engines, so, like, just, like, priming, like, all that
Yeah.
stuff, mixing the gas was totally new to me. Haley knew more than that, like, me about that stuff. Um, she used to work on a Christmas tree farm, and
Uh-huh.
anyway, but then at some point, I ended up getting one of those DeWalt electric chainsaws, and man, I can't tell you the last time I used my gas one. I use that electric one almost every week.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing's amazing. And it's like light enough that you could kind of get in some like awkward angles if you need to, because there's a lot of chaparral and manzanita where I build. So it's pretty tight usually where you're cutting. So it's definitely that thing's amazing. I don't know about yours, but does yours leak oil like I was talking about in mine?
So I also have a DeWalt, and the body of it is basically the same. So I'm like 90% sure it uses the same bar oil cover. And
Hmm.
not only does it leak oil, the thing that I don't like about that specific one is it's cupped. Like, if you look at the where the top goes in, the top
Hmm.
is like flush with the body of the chainsaw
Okay.
because it's kind of like recessed. So when you go to pour oil in, if you accidentally dribble some on the side, it kind of funnels it into the bar oil reservoir, which
Oh,
makes
I
sense. And,
see.
like however, if you have like a bunch of like wood chips on your chainsaw,
They just go in there.
you can't clean them out before you like pull that top, and so they end up
Yeah.
falling into um, that thing. And I've had issues with the oil pump not pumping oil to the bar because it's clogged. So I have to like disassemble. Well, the first time I didn't know where it was clogged, so I ended up disassembling the whole chainsaw, figuring out where it was, and
Hmm.
turned out I could have probably just cleaned out the reservoir itself. But
Hmm.
like, it was one of those things where it's like, I got another DeWalt chainsaw like a few weeks ago to like, it's a longer one.
Hmm.
But this is a more professional grade, and it's a different design. So like, that's like, it's actually like protruding. So if any chips get on the chainsaw,
Yeah.
it's not going to go into, it's like a standard cap, like a cap
Yeah.
on
Yeah. That
soda.
totally makes sense what you're saying. I was wondering about that, and I'm glad that you said that to me, because I'm sure it's going to end up clogging on me one of these days. And now I at least know like what to do. Cause yeah, because I was thinking about that, because I'll have all kinds of wood chips and stuff like all over there. And when you open it up, you're like, I guess this stuff just falls in there. I don't know. I was assuming there's some kind of filter, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, like, I got to the point where I was like routinely cleaning it, either before or after using it to like try to minimize how much. I spent the whole like better part of a day like just fiddling around with that thing, trying to get it back together.
Yeah, yeah. The only problem I've had is I had one day where it was overheating on me, because I think it was just so hot, and I was continuously using it for like hours. You know what I mean? And I thought I thought it was broken. I was thinking it was like, oh man, that sucks. I've only had this thing for a couple of months, and now it's not working anymore. But once I took it home and it cooled off, it fired up just fine next time. So I guess it's just I was just using it like consistently too long.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the batteries, because I know the batteries sometimes like heat up past like, or it get too cold and won't like work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who knows? I mean, I haven't had the problem again since then. So it was a hot day, and like I said, I would expect that probably when they built that thing, they weren't expecting you to be like it to be running like continuously for hours. You know what I mean?
I've definitely used mine above its design use.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like you said though, I was kind of paranoid to use it, because I had a friend that like almost cut his arm off with one of those things. Like it kicked back on him, and um another guy recently, the creator, No Front Brakes, he had a little
Yep.
electric chainsaw incident recently too, and it's just one of those things where it's like, man, and like where I'm building, I'm kind of way out there. It would really suck to have something happen, and then what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I definitely approached the chainsaw with an abundance of caution.
Yeah.
And now that I've like used it a lot more and kind of, you know, figured out like what to watch out for, I'm a little bit less careful. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I should be wearing chaps, but honestly, it's like when you need to go do something really quickly, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. So,
Yeah.
to me, it's just like, just be cautious, but at the same time, like if I have to walk back to the house, get the chaps, like it's to me at that
Yeah.
point, the job's not going to get done.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that I've become complacent with the safety kind of aspect of it. There's been a couple of times where I was cutting something funny and the blade popped through, and then it was like, oh shit, that was pretty close to my foot. You know what I mean? Where it was like, okay, man, you need to like take a step back and stop like focusing on what you're doing and start thinking about like the ramifications of if you screw up, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like the two things that I like won't like at least one thing that I like won't go without protection is ear protection. For some reason, like that's just something that like I might be like shirtless or I don't chainsaw shirtless, but like I could be shirtless and in shorts. I'll be in a chainsaw, but I'll
Yeah.
always have ear protection on. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and same with eye protection though. Sometimes I'll do safety squints, like if like I'm just gonna do something really quickly, but
Yeah.
I
I,
like I do like you can't get your hearing back, you can't get your eyesight back, so
yeah.
I try to preserve that.
Yeah. I'm usually wearing like riding glasses. So I have like the protection in that aspect, but, the hearing one, for whatever reason, I wasn't really thinking about it because it's like that electric one's not super loud, you know?
Yeah, I mean it's still loud enough where it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and I know it's like above the decibel range where if like you listen to it for a long enough time, it will
Yeah.
like mess up your hearing.
That makes sense. I should definitely consider that. So you did a lot of building when you moved into your new home. How did all of that series work out? I mean, like you said, the videos take a lot longer to make, but did people respond well to them?
Yeah, there was a really good response with that. And I think there is like, especially early on in pandemic, like everyone like was just really excited to see that stuff, and then it dropped off pretty quickly.
You think?
Yeah, because like I ended up doing some more stuff later on, and did not have the same effect on YouTube. So I think that's why I was like, all right, well, I'm going to continue to build and I'm going to film it.
Hmm.
But I'm going to film it just with a GoPro, and I'm just going to have a whole backlog of footage. And whenever I have some extra time, I'll like edit another video. And I've started posting that on like a secondary YouTube channel, which is a little bit more less polished, but it kind of like shows the overview of a project and kind of show like piece by piece of a project I'm doing.
Hmm.
But like it's very it's not like there's no voiceover or anything included in that kind of video.
Right, right. Just kind of like more a little bit of like a raw channel almost.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I'll talk to the camera like in person, but I won't go back and like edit the video and put a voiceover. Like, if I have to, I'll put a little text box, kind of like how people used to annotate stuff back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll do like one of those, but like for me, it's like the more editing I do to a video, the less I want to make that video.
Hmm.
And so I've tried to find the balance of like where like what am I willing to put into a video, and if it goes above a certain point, I'm not going to make the video. So I'm going to try to bring it down below that point so I at least make the video.
That's interesting that you say that because I think I struggle with something similar. Like what I was talking about, like kind of paralyzing myself with the edit earlier. I found myself doing that more and more lately. So it gets harder and harder I feel like once I start, like I kind of like ADD. So I will just like get sucked into it and there's nothing else in my world, but it's just getting me actually to get started. Like it's hard for me to lock in when I know it's going to be complicated, you know?
Yeah, and so I've like if you go back to my very first like skills video and even my first like kind of shredded that I made on like a pump track, if you look at those in the big picture for like a first video context, those are really like high bars set for yourself.
Hmm.
And I've since kind of reeled it back a little bit. Like, I think my videos are now better, but I put a ton of effort trying to make sure that every little thing was perfect, you know. And then now there's a lot of things I look at. I'm like, yeah, that might be a mistake, but I'm okay with that. Or, like back in the day, I used to like, it was just really hard to get good audio if you didn't spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I would always try to like come up with different ways to get you need a wide angle lens to get the camera close to you. But I didn't have a budget for like a super wide angle lens. So like it was trying to like figure out ways to like sneak a recorder in the back and all these weird things. And like by the end of the day, like I wouldn't enjoy making the videos.
How many subscribers do you have on your channel now?
I'm at 540,000, somewhere around there, plus or minus 8 or something like that.
Do you feel like it was like a certain point in your growth that you were like, you stopped looking at the subscribers and you just started like focusing on just making whatever you wanted to make?
I mean, I think it's hard to completely not pay attention to that. However, I think the way YouTube has evolved as a platform, they steer people away from the subscribe button now, and because they want people to go to their home feed, which is like somewhat algorithmic and somewhat of your subscription feed, and that's where they want you to get your content from now.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so for me, like the metric has changed. Like there was a like point in time where like my channel was gaining a ton of subscribers, and then if you compare how I'm doing now compared to then, I'm not gaining nearly as much. But that's not necessarily because my content has changed. It's kind of like the channel or the platform has changed.
Yeah, I mean the platform's definitely changed, and you see it kind of evolving all the time right now. The whole shorts kind of thing is really becoming relevant. Are you making content like that?
So I was actually on TikTok a while ago, and I really, oddly enough, I really like TikTok as both a consumer and a creator. However, the amount of effort I would need to put into, or you need to put into TikTok is more than people think. And like for the way I'd want to do it, which is a little bit more responding to questions. And I had some like really good success like on TikTok and whatnot, but then I just like my attention span kind of like fizzled out. Like I could only be like 100% on one platform, or else I'd be like 2% on all the platforms. So I ended up kind of like, I just lurk right now on TikTok, and I like most of my feed is nothing to do with bikes. But I'm on like, as a consumer, I'm on TikTok all the time. So to me, it tells me that it's a very relevant place to be. But as a creator, I'm not really doing much there. As far as shorts go, I've been dabbling with putting some out here and there. Just trying to see what the response is. Cause like, I put some out last year, and these are more or less riding clips. And this is when the shorts was first announced. And like, the comments just annoyed me because I was like, oh, get this vertical video out of my feed, yada, yada. Which I wish YouTube would just not put it in your subscription box. I wish they would like put it in like a different feed. So people like, if you published a short, it wouldn't go to your normal like subscription feed. I would prefer, if YouTube did that, I'd probably post more shorts.
Do you enjoy making the short form content, or?
It's different kind of content. Like for TikTok, I enjoyed it because it gave me a different kind of creative process. On YouTube, I kind of just took little snippets of my videos and just kind of like cut them down. So there wasn't like a huge like creative process there. Just kind of like finding a few like snippets that like were buried in videos that were moments that people probably didn't see. And try to like bring some light, because there's like, I'm sure you have it. Like you have videos that just don't do well for some reason, but like
Yeah.
there's a point in the video that's like, man, this is like the greatest clip ever, and no
Yeah.
one never sees that.
Yeah. I hear you there.
So I've been trying
Yeah.
to like play around with like sprinkling some of the, I guess like the underrated moments in shorts right now and seeing how that goes.
I think I remember seeing something that YouTube has like some new feature that's getting ready to come out. Something like that, where you can actually take snippets of your own videos and then publish them to like for your subscribers or something like that. Because somebody had mentioned it to me about using it to make clips of my podcast here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, we both. There's just like a little baby lag when you're using the internet, and I think that tiny bit of lag is enough for like people to be like, oh, it's time for me to talk, So I do it all the time too, so don't worry about it.
So to your point, actually in one of my most recent videos, I knew about that feature. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to try something. Because like if I take a normal like wide angle clip and try to fit it into a video, you're going to crop in, it's going to be like super zoomed in.
Right.
It just looks awful. So what I did is I took a segment with a 360 cam and put that in the video and like kind of snuck it in there in some ways. And I tried to, I was going to take that and turn that into one of those shorts. Because like once you crop in on that feels more like at home on the like the shorts feed.
Right.
But YouTube's like the way they go about compressing that file is so awful that footage was completely unusable.
Wow.
So I had all this like thing planned out and I tried it and it wasn't gonna work, so I didn't even post it.
Yeah, you know what I've been thinking about doing is because you can record the GoPro in that aspect, the sideways aspect ratio. And I was thinking about going out on a ride, where the rides were like I wouldn't normally actually just be like filming for some kind of video, where you were talking about like the after work rides or like to me like a training ride or whatever, and just wearing a camera on one of those, but recording it in that other aspect. So then that way, whenever you get home, you could like, hey, that little rocky shoot, that's really cool. Like you can make a 15-second video and it's already shot in the right way,
Yeah, man, so I have the Instago 2. Tiny little, like it's like almost like an AirPod case that has a camera inside it. I was really hoping that camera would like be like the perfect camera for that because like it's so small, you can just slip it onto your visor, it can do vertical video, but it's like still like I don't know, something about the wide angle lens was just too cropped down. Like I don't want to bring a GoPro with me on a after work ride.
Yeah.
Because I think they weigh a lot. I feel like I need to wear my full face in it because I never find that like my half shells stabilize or like heavy enough or hold onto my head enough to like prevent it from shaking around. So anytime I mount like a GoPro on one of those like helmets, it's just like footage is awful. And not to mention not safe.
Yeah. I was hoping that the new session that they were bringing out was going to be super light, but it really isn't that much lighter. When they release the specs, it's like not very many grams less, so it's like they took the extra screens out, but when you look at the weight, you're like, well, it still weighs more, I think, than an old Hero 4 did,
Yeah, I was really hoping they would kind of use a little bit more of the like same form factor because like one of the beauties of the original session was like it was so easy to like turn it from horizontal to vertical.
Yeah.
And it was also super compact, so you could fit it into little nooks and crannies that the other cameras couldn't fit. Now the new GoPro has like a much wider or like a much taller sensor than in years past. So in some ways they rotating the camera isn't a necessity anymore. You can get vertical video with a regular GoPro.
Yeah.
But it's still it's still heavy. Like the
Yeah.
new GoPros are really heavy.
Yeah. I've been thinking in my head that it would be rad if they could just make like the camera lens and a battery and some way that it wirelessly transmits to the rest of it, and then you could just carry this like brick in your backpack, and then you would have this super light, thing that you can mount somewhere else. Even if you had like, let's just say for a chest mounted one, like if I had just the camera on my chest and then I could like run a little wire through my shirt and into my hip pack, like I feel like, dude, that would be so rad, to have something just like really light on the front there, and you'd be able to, place it better. I don't know.
Yeah, the what was it? The GoPro Bones seems like if you could kind of do that. It's not that much smaller if you look at like the footprint of it, but it's definitely lighter. And if you wanted to like tinker with something, you could do that. But I thought about it for a while. It's like I had zero interest in trying to figure that out, even though I don't think it would be terribly hard. It'd just be time consuming.
Yeah. I was working on a chest mount, a new chest mount that's more like a magnetic one. And I was thinking that maybe just that alone will make me a little happier, and we'll see if I was like I bought a 3D printer a while ago. Have you ever done any of that?
No, those are what like I'm really interested in it. I just know with how like spread out right now I am, it's one of those things where I wouldn't be able to dedicate the time needed to like actually like learn to use it proficiently.
Yeah. That's why I was afraid to buy one too. And finally one day I like broke down and did it. And it was definitely a time suck for a while, but one of the projects that I really was like all after at the beginning was building that chesty, but for whatever reason I lost interest. But maybe I'll rekindle that flame here in the winter now that it starts raining and stuff, and I won't be able to ride as much. So what do when you were building out your house, I know you did a lot of building in the past. Was it different? Like, was it some way different because now it was your property and there was zero like restrictions? Or
Yeah, actually it had the opposite effect. Now that I was building on my own land, I wanted to make sure I wasn't completely messing up the ecosystem.
oh yeah, okay.
And like it like feels like I started approaching trail building from a different um just kind of flipped how I looked at trail building a little bit more. I also should say like we ended up buying an excavator. So
Mm-hmm.
like we could move dirt and do a lot more damage really quickly. But
Yeah.
it's really easy to make a big mess with an excavator.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Um, and so for me, it was an interesting process where I hadn't used an excavator a little bit before, but I hadn't used it in the woods.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just a lot of fun trying to like learn how to use it in the woods and then build trail that when you would go to ride it, whether it was in like a week or a few months or a few years, that to make it look like it wasn't built by a machine.
Right.
And that is very tricky.
Yeah.
Like it gave me a whole new respect for like good machine built trails. There's plenty of really bad machine built trails,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say a lot of the good machine built trails you don't even realize are machine built.
Mm-hmm. Are you happy with your trail system back there? Is like, does
Oh
it feel
yeah.
done to you, or do you feel like there's still more that you want to do?
Oh, we're definitely not done. But this year, we we have one more project. It's funny because like I don't work in a linear fashion. I don't start at the beginning and work my way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I work on a section of trail that I feel like takes the most priority or
Mm-hmm.
will be the most like useful in terms of connecting different sections.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I started a trail last fall that kind of made use of a part of a property that was pretty wet and would be very useful, like if we got it up and running, and it did. But like then it was just kind of like this middle part of a trail that didn't have a beginning or didn't have an end. So like in most people's brains that doesn't make any sense. But
right.
There was other things that like where I wanted the trail to start. There were like a bunch of other things that I needed to do to that section before I started building up there. So there was just a lot of things I needed to do beforehand. But anyway, we built this really cool trail that starts at the top of where our dirt jumps is, and then snakes all the way down, crosses a stream twice, and like snakes all along. And the only like the last project I was working on was all rock work, because depending on where you are in our property, the climate is, or the geography is totally different. You have like sandy stuff up top, like where it's a little bit more loamy, and then you get into the woods, it's a little bit more pine tree kind of, and then you go down, and then like you have a bunch of like ferns, rocks, and birch trees. And
yeah, it's like super like soggy and marshy down there, right?
Yeah, and so it was tricky because like, you know, I'm trying to do like think about how water is going to flow, and like I want these to be used. Not only do I want these to be used in the summer, but like we also cross country ski out there. So these are also going to be our cross country ski trails or snowshoeing trails to do something in the winter.
How big is the property?
It's a little over 6 acres.
Yeah, so you got a pretty decent amount of space then to deal with. And is it pretty good like elevation loss there, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough where you can have about a minute or just under a minute long worth of a trail.
Yeah, that's super fun then. So, and then a little decent climb back up, and you can just lap and lap and lap then.
Well, it's so the cool thing about it, it's like it's an L shape. And like, so this one's like long and skinny, and this is kind of like tucked away in the woods. So you can, and this is all a slope down to this point down here. And this trail or this stuff is all sloped down to here. So it's almost like a V, where this is like the bottom of the trail network.
The V, the point of the V for those of you listening.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So like all the trails funnel down to that point. And so you have two completely like separate climbs.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
So it actually works out really well. But if you're trying to like, you know, make the property a farm, it's terrible for that, because it's hard to access like some stuff in the back, and it's
But for a mountain biker, you're like, this is sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. That's super cool. Like you guys, you're in Vermont, so you get a pretty decent winter up there. What do you do for content in the winter?
I hibernate.
Yeah, just that's it, man. Work on all the stuff you recorded over the summer.
Kind of. So last year I had content all the way up to mid-January, and that's when I kind of like ran out of pre-recorded stuff. So I did a few, like 1 or 2 videos of like that's when I actually did like a product review video where I talked about flat pedal shoes. I also did a video about my editing process. I also did a video about maybe camera settings. Like I sprinkled a few of those videos in there. And what I noticed is like, it's just not a whole lot of mountain bikers looking for mountain bike content in the winter.
Yeah.
And I just, once I was done with that, I was like, all right, well, I'll just take a break and kind of give myself like some time off and get ready for the next year. And, you know, took like 2 or 3 months off from like posting content. And then come March, I started like gearing back up and getting content out. So for me, like there's a year that I tried doing snowboarding content, because I know there's a lot of overlap, but I don't know if it's because of the content itself, the algorithm, not knowing what to do with a different sort of or different kind of content. Like the first video did okay, and then the second video, like I could tell, like it wasn't even being shown to any of my like subscribers.
That's weird. That's
like,
weird how the algorithm does that stuff.
Yeah, like for example, like one video had like 100,000 views, and like the next video, I don't even think it broke 15,000.
Yeah, that's crazy. But sometimes, man, it's like it's so hard to know. Like, is that the algorithm, or is it like you just had a shitty thumbnail, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and like I sometimes I wish like it would just tell you. I mean,
yeah,
you can tell based on click through rate, but
right, right,
only to a point.
right. Or you could tell, like, oh, well, all the people that did click it, they watched the video like almost the whole way through. So it must be a good video. It's just getting the people to actually click it. But I don't know. And there's so many, like, there's so much guesswork that you could make an argument for almost anything. You know, you could be like, well, maybe the people that actually are the ones that clicked it are just the type of people that are going to watch the whole video. You know what I mean? Like you could just take yourself down like a statistical nightmare, you know?
Yeah, I think like one of the best things I did was I pay attention to the analytics, but I stopped obsessing over them. There was like a time where I was like really trying to like, like drill down and try and like decipher like different things. And at some points, it's just if you're spending more time doing that and like it's restricting you from making content, it tells you like some really important things, and you should be aware of what it's telling you.
Yeah.
But at some point, it's okay to have content that is not like tailored for the algorithm, and it might
Yeah.
not do as well, but it's just like different filmmakers have different styles of filmmaking. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them are like super popular, Quentin Tarantino, and then some of them they're more of a cult classic, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
just like uh they never they're just for a very small group of people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about for sure. It's definitely it's it's something that you can let control you or like motivate you, or there's just so many like ups and downs with that the stats and looking at them. And I try to do my best to just not pay attention at all and just make the content that I want to make, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen, you know?
Yeah, you know, eh, I think there's definitely some like if you completely ignore it, you're you're definitely not going to make it. But if you like completely obsess over it, you're also probably not going to make it unless you just have the resources to like make all those things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Back to the winter thing. I remember seeing you did a video. I want to say you had like a ski bike or something like that, and you built some like half pipe kind of thing in your backyard, like a
Yeah,
little course, little tabletops and stuff.
yeah. Well, so like in the winter, a lot of times we turn like the immediate backyard where our septic and like leach field is.
Uh
We'll
huh.
turn that into a bit of a snow skate course.
Yeah. Didn't you like climb on the roof or something like that, and you like jumped
Yeah,
off the roof?
last year I climbed up on the roof of our garage and jumped off that.
Yeah. What were you thinking when you were climbing up there? Were you like, this is probably a bad idea?
Definitely, but also like our neighbors were like out there too, so they were like, "Oh, this is a bad idea."
That's always fun, you know. So little, I think stuff like that. I mean, it caught my attention, and I don't watch all your content, so it was definitely like good to see some like kind of other than biking stuff out there over the winter. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, that one was fun because like I wanted to do more with it, um,
Mm-hmm.
but because of how much snow we got,
Mm-hmm.
it was actually hard to move on that. It was a snow scooter. It was basically like a razor scooter that had a snowboard cut in half on the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's actually like super fun,
Uh-huh.
but you don't really float over snow like you would on a snowboard. There's not as much surface area.
So you kind of sink.
Yeah, so you almost need packed snow for it,
Uh-huh. I
and
got it.
or a really steep hill. So like we tried bringing it out into some of our mountain bike features, and it's like I just tomahawked myself off like into the snow.
Just looking for an injury, right?
Yeah, and like the worst part about it is Haley had just come off getting some hardware removed. So she had surgery to get some hardware removed from her ankle, and so
Uh-huh.
she's like in her kind of like I think it was her first or second week out of surgery, hobbling around the snow, filming
Oh,
me walking around in the woods doing that. And I was like, if this like starts hurting you, just please tell me that you can't go any further.
right, right.
Because
Yeah,
it like when like the snow gets like a foot deep, it is a chore to like go anywhere.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes back home, it would like rain after you got a bunch of snow, and then you would have like this coating of ice on top of the snow. Does that happen up there sometimes
Oh
where
yeah.
you're
Oh
actually
yeah.
like able to like it's almost like you're on an ice skate rink, but like on top of the snow.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes like you'll have like a decent layer of snow, like 8 inches, and you'll have like probably inch thick worth of ice. And if
Yeah.
you try to like snowboard or something on that, what ends up happening is if your like nose dives any bit below the surface, you can't get it back up because it's like the surface tension is just like, I mean, you can if you like got lucky, but a lot of times
Right.
like you get sucked under uh and you're done. You're
Yeah.
going straight to your face at some point.
Right. Right. So do you just use snow sports to keep yourself fit during the winter, or you just kind of like come back into spring and get after it, or
I am terrible at working out.
mm-hmm.
I've I think the last time we talked, that year, we used bouldering as what we did in winter to keep ourselves busy, which was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then after the pandemic, it was like, yeah, I don't think being in a confined indoor space in the middle of winter with a bunch of other people is like the best place to be right now.
Right.
So we ended up like not renewing our gym membership, and I think there was one year that we did a lot of snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
Then that interest kind of fizzled out. Like you're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
So next year it was like snow skates. We were really into that, and then that kind of fizzled out. And I think last year, in this like I wouldn't say this is necessarily an interest, but we've been doing a lot more of Apple Fitness,
Mm-hmm.
Apple Plus workouts, and man, I always found those TV workouts to be so cheesy. Like, and I hate to say it, I actually kind of enjoy like just going down in the basement doing like a 15-20 minute Pilates. And I didn't even know what Pilates was until I started doing it. And you know what? Like when you come back and you're freaking like core's on fire and you're like glutes are on fire after just doing it for 10 minutes, you're like, what the hell like have I been missing that this stupid little TV workout is making me do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like that's been something that I've been doing a lot more recently because I've always had a pretty weak core. I've been pretty athletic otherwise, but like in terms of my core is probably like, the thing that I've was my biggest weakness. So for me,
Yeah.
just doing that kind of stuff, honestly, I have to say, like, I'll give Apple every credit. Like, those workouts are like they're pretty good. Like, they're a pretty good, well-rounded workout, and like it will target some muscles that you didn't even know you have. Like, and this is like, in the past, I've gone to the gym and just done kind of more of like um your typical like barbell and dumbbell like routines,
Mm-hmm.
and or like even like throwing in some elastic band kind of stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
the Apple like fitness stuff, like it's not bad.
Yeah. Is it led by a person or like a
Yeah, I think that's why like like I'm not going to do it every day, but um it feels a little bit more social. And I think that's kind of why I don't hate it. um
so I
it's
mean
just
like on the screen, is it like a person like standing there like telling you like, hey, do this, or is it just like a picture and it's telling you to
yeah,
do
so they have like the same fitness studio that they use in every video. But it's actually three people. They have like kind of
mm-hmm.
the leader, and
Mm-hmm.
then they have like two modifiers. They have someone who's doing the same workout but doing it a step below. So if you're like you find something's too difficult, you kind of pay attention to what they're doing. And then you have someone who's doing the same workout but a step above. So it gives
Oh,
you some like wiggle room
yeah.
to if you like find that like something's just becoming too difficult, you can kind of drop down without really stopping the workout.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the one thing that's tough about like Pilates or yoga when you first get started. And if you were just to go to some place, like they expect everybody in there like knows what downward dog is, or like, you know what I mean? And you're like just standing there like, kind of copy what other people are doing, you know? So
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Because I'm super self-conscious.
yeah.
I one of the things I struggled with most is going to like a regular gym and trying to do something that I haven't done before, and I'm trying to learn the movement like while I'm there. I always
Hmm.
found that super nerve-wracking, or just anytime I'd go to the gym, I found that to just be a very nerve-wracking place to be.
Hmm.
It's not a place I ever felt comfortable. I didn't like it. Like I like going to kind of like the corners where no one, like there's nobody, and I'd kind of
Yeah.
like try to figure out how to make a workout happen there. But if
Yeah.
like there's a ton of people looking, like I'd also go at the off hours, like after 8 o'clock at night or something, and like with
Yeah.
the weird times. Um,
Yeah.
but now that I can do it in the comfort of my own home, like you don't care about looking like an idiot.
Yeah.
So it's like now, like I think I would be a little bit more comfortable going into like a group Pilates session. I don't think I would do it, but like I feel like just learning in my own home, much like every other skill I've ever learned, I can learn it at my own pace and kind of
Hmm.
like not worry about being made fun of, because
Yeah.
for some reason that's still like something like that like I'm scared of. Like it's like just people like, that guy's not doing it right. You
Yeah.
should be doing it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how things from, I don't know, your childhood or whatever come like still affect you even whenever logically you can think about it. Like, you know, there's probably nobody in a Pilates class looking at somebody that's just like screwing it all up and thinking like they want to make fun of them. They're probably just like, oh, look, that guy's just starting, good for him. You know what I mean? Like, but in your head you're like, oh, everybody's laughing at me, and you know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like same with mountain biking. Like I don't really notice when there's a new rider. It's just like, oh, you're getting into sport, awesome. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I prefer to work out at home though. I've had, you know, the gym experience and the home experience, and I think for me, the reason I like it at home more is just because I feel like I can just like be more efficient about it. Like I could get out, get the workout done. I don't have to spend the time driving somewhere and driving back, and I don't have to like wait for some other guy that's on that one machine that I wanted to use or whatever, or you know what I mean? And so it's like I personally just really enjoy having a gym at home, but I will say that there's something to be said for going somewhere. Like it's easier to like maybe motivate yourself, I guess you could say, because you're like you have to go, and then it's like you're there now. I have to do it, you know.
yeah. So I have 2 points to that. One, you kind of just alluded to, like there's something about accountability of other people being there. They saw you walk through that door. If you
Yeah,
leave in 10 minutes, whether they paid attention to you or not,
yeah,
in the back of your head, they saw you walk through that door. So you better be there for, 45 minutes before you decide to walk out.
right.
Um, so I felt like going to a gym, there is a little bit more accountability in that sense. So
Hmm.
you like, um, so you'd if you went, like you were committed.
Yeah,
However, in terms of like working out at home, like I always found it really easy to like, yeah, I'm really bored of this one set. I'm done. Like I'm not gonna do like my last set. I'm just I'm
yeah,
the the coffee maker is right over there. I can go make a cup of coffee and you know watch YouTube
yeah.
videos.
I don't usually struggle with that. For me, it's more I'm really good at procrastinating. So then it's like, you know, originally I wanted to work out at 9, and then it's next thing you know, it's 1 p.m. and I'm like, oh God, I gotta do it. And you know, and then it starts turning into this weight that I'm carrying around instead of just like getting it done, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like that's the other thing that I've kind of enjoyed about the Apple Fitness stuff is like it's like 10 minutes is like super quick. Like if I'm making oatmeal, I can start like, put the, saucer on the stove, put the like oats in, turn the water on low, go downstairs, do a workout for 10 minutes and be up. Hey, my breakfast is ready. So it's like a good like way to like if I'm going to be waiting around, I might as well like make that time useful. But the
Yeah.
other thing is like none of the workouts are the same, so it's always a little bit different. And
Right.
as much as I am a creature of comfort where I like kind of some kind of a routine, I
Uh-huh.
hate predictability.
Right.
And if I know like if I get into a monotonous schedule, like that to me is the scariest thing ever. Like if I know like, all right, here's a time, like here's a workout where we need to do I don't know, what's something I hate doing. I
Let's
don't know,
just say
like
burpees. Everybody
yeah,
hates burpees.
burpees are right. Yes, something like oh man, I hate that. Like no, all the workouts are different. You don't know what's coming up, and it's kind of like it's like oh crap, we're doing this. Well, I guess we'll do it.
Yeah. I can relate with you there because there's certain things like I would tend to like do sets of 3, but each set is like 3 different exercises. And there would always be one where it'd be like, oh man, I don't want to do those stupid flutter kicks or whatever it is. It's like you'd be like kind of loathing it knowing it's coming up. So if you're watching that video instead, you don't know it's coming until like, oh, well, now I guess that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, anything with like abs, like or core workout, like you usually have to like count to like high numbers or like wait like a few minutes if you're doing like planks or something. And it's
Yeah.
like it was really easy to talk like, all right, well, 25 is pretty close to 50, so yeah, we'll stop here. Like
Right
I don't
on.
know, like I feel like most of my fitness happens through riding.
Mm-hmm. So do you
Like
do any kind of like trainer or anything like that during the winter?
no,
No.
I tried doing that for when I was doing collegiate stuff, and yeah, it just again it becomes very monotonous.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's hard to get yourself onto it, and then once you're on it, it's like, oh, this isn't too bad, and then like 15 minutes later, like yeah, this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought one of those trainers from a friend of mine that was selling his because he like was upgrading or something. And it's been in my garage for like 2 years. I've never used it. Just like completely pointless because for me, it's just, I'd rather just ride my bike. And if the weather's crappy, then I'm not riding my bike, you know?
I'm very much I with everything I've done in my life, if I'm not enjoying it or like enjoying the process,
Hmm.
I have no interest in it. Like it's not that like I get a really good workout from trail building. Like
Right.
anytime I do any like basically every other week throughout the summer we've done a lot of trail building, and like there are rocks that most people come to like oh yeah we can't move that rock, and I look at it with Haley, I'm like yeah we can move that rock.
Right. Yeah. Let's do it.
And like so like I come back from a trail work day and like I'm completely drenched in sweat, like out like my fitness tracker is like yeah like even though you weren't tracking a workout, like you did a workout.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually had a rotator cuff issue for that I've been like trying to get to heal. And it took me a while to realize, but it was trail work was what was like screwing it up. Like I was overusing my shoulder doing building. And it was finally like, once I kind of made sense of that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I can slow down on that a little bit. Cause you're right, man. It's a big workout and you'll be out there maybe sometimes all day, all day long. And so it's like 8 hours of chucking debris or whatever. Like you're smoked.
Yeah, I mean like you unless you're doing this like bench cutting where you just kind of like swing McLeod or pickaxe, like a lot of times like there's a lot of different movements that you're doing,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a good way just to keep moving. And I
Yeah.
that's why as much as I like building in the excavator, I also like hand building just as much because it's just a easy way to trick yourself into getting a workout.
Yeah. 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 I didn't know how much that I liked trail building until I got serious into this one trail that some friends and I were building. And before that, I had done some trail work days, but I never really like took something from earth to rideable. And man, it's so rewarding to be able to ride something and be challenged by it at the end of it and think like there was nothing here, before. And now there's like people with Strava times on it that are, 10 times faster than yours. And you're like, that's just crazy,
I feel like I go back and forth whether I like trail building or riding more.
Uh-huh.
Like throughout the summer, depending on when you ask me that question, I'll give you a different answer.
Yeah.
I very much like taking a piece of land. Like oddly enough, I really like working with water and figuring out how to drain things.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at something and being like, how do I use the materials that are immediately in my area and
Mm-hmm.
making something out of that?
Mm-hmm.
And um, how do I make sure that it's resistant to like rainstorms? Like, so it's a big puzzle, and then it's also exercise. And
Yeah.
then at the end, you're left with a statue or some kind of proof that you did all this work. Most
Yeah.
people won't know how much work went into it, but you remember.
Yeah. You definitely start to appreciate other trails more after you've built some too, and like you'll be like, man, that freaking rock work right there, that must have took forever to get like dialed the way that it is or something like that. Or I don't know. I know like I've taken some guys up on the in the area that I was building that really haven't built before, and they would come to like some section and they'd be like, oh, we can't do anything here, and it'd be like, no, we just got to pile some rocks and do this and it'll be totally rideable, and they're just looking at you like, you're crazy, dude, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
one of my favorite things is just like kind of going back to that initial rock thing is like when people are like, yeah, we can't move this or we can't build something here. It's like we can build something here. Like there's a lot of dirt like that you can get from the ground if you like look at it the right way or approach it the right way. It's like I feel like once you show people that can be done, they're like, oh wow, that wasn't as hard as I expected.
yeah, there's definitely been some sections where it's like, yeah, you just got to bench cut the shit out of this and push a bunch of those rocks down the hill, and next thing you know, you'll have a berm or something, and it's like, yeah, it's definitely very enjoyable. It's enjoyable in a way that I did not understand when people were talking about it online before I actually kind of got into it.
Yeah, this year, one of the things that we've been doing is so one of the local chapters, they've been putting in an adaptive trail network.
Oh, cool.
And so we've been kind of volunteering since like the beginning. But it's very different to build because we're mainly focusing on the climb first and then the downhill. We got to the downhill at the end of this year, but initially we were just doing the climbing. It is really hard really different to build a climbing trail for an adaptive bike because off camber is not something you can have.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And the turning radius is a lot different than you'd expect. Obviously, you'd expect it to be wide, but the way that it is wide, they turn more like a tractor trailer and less of a nice smooth arc.
Oh, okay.
And so just like learning how to build a climbing trail for that has been really interesting.
I don't know about you, but man, climbing trails are mentally just difficult because for whatever, I don't know, at least the ones that I've built, it's like like you're building something that is necessary, but not necessarily something that is fun. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's like, God, I just want this to be over. And then but you're still trying to keep the slope so it's not ridiculous. But at the same time, you want it to be steeper because you want it to be done quicker. You know what I mean?
It's funny. I think because I hate climbing so much, I actually enjoy building climbing trails more
Oh, there you
in
go.
some like weird way where
Yeah.
like, or maybe I don't enjoy building them more, but I'm like very conscious of what makes a climbing trail good and what makes a climbing trail bad.
Yeah.
And so I'm really good at making sure that things are laid out in such a way that there's not going to be any like crappy like gut like sucking punches.
Right. I totally know where you're coming from there. The shitty part is when you're building with other friends that don't care about the gut sucking punches, and they're like putting them in, and then you're coming there and you're like, oh, dude.
Yeah, I'd also say I'm pretty good at fixing other people's trails and making them more palatable.
Yeah. How do you how how do you get from like kind of a walkthrough to actually something being like dialed? At least for me, I've probably gotten better at it, over time. But initially, I would, you'd put a bunch of turns and twists in, and then once you actually got on your bike, you'd be like, "This needs to be straighter," or "That's just like it's not fun. It doesn't make any sense." You know what I mean? Like, are you at a point right now where you can like nail it on the first try, or?
I don't think anyone quite is.
Yeah.
I think you're able to adapt like when you realize like this turn's going to be tighter than I thought it was going to be. You can then tailor the trail to kind of I guess overcome the trail layout.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely gotten better at that. Like as far as like the process, it's still I've been building for over a decade now, and it's still one of those things where like I find downhills to be a little bit trickier to build because sometimes you don't realize how much speed you're going to be carrying in a certain spot.
Yeah.
Um, and then not to mention like, depending on the like soil type, like or like depending on the time of the year, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that when the snow is melting, this whole section right here is just like super wet until like mid-June.
Mm-hmm.
So like learning how to like for me it's taken a while to learn how to read the landscape a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, for me, the area that I'm building in, you don't really have line of sight until you clear out all of the shrubs and stuff, the manzanita and whatnot. So you're really just kind of guessing. And then once you have something cleared out, then you can kind of dial it in more. I always look at places like your property or some other people, like where I see like Seth building, where I'm like, man, that'd be so rad to be able to like walk through and put down flags first,
Yeah, it's funny like so because I both Haley and I went to school in North Carolina. That's where we met. Like we both were took part in building a trail on our school campus that was um half a mile long through rhododendron and just like
Mm-hmm.
kind of and it was the first time I ever used a machete to
Mm-hmm.
build trail because like you're just kind of hacking in like in the dark like you kind of had an idea of where you're trying to head and you just kind of
Yeah.
bushwhacked your way through it and um this was like happened to be a forest where there's a bunch of old growth hemlocks that had gone infested by beetles. So like you'd sometimes get to a point where there's a giant like hemlock that like this is not basically the size of sequoia that had fallen. Now you
Mm-hmm.
have to go around it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but backing off of that, coming to our property now, like where you do have line of sight, it's still not quite that easy because like there's a lot of sections. Oops, sorry about that. There's a lot of sections where there's the root systems are at the top of the soil because it's really wet.
Uh-huh.
So you have to build up and over that. You can't, and like, or it's really rocky. So like, there's other challenges. Like, yeah, you can see, but you can also see it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would fly a drone over top of where we were at so that I could see what we did, and then like maybe some major like, hey, there's a huge pine over there, and I can kind of like head in that direction, and that's basically the only thing that we could use to really kind of like point the trail. Otherwise, it's just like, I mean, you're just blindly going through, clearing it out.
Yeah, I think one of the harder things for me is it's really easy to look at a trail and be like, all right, here's point A, here's point B, draw a straight line. That's where the trail goes.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ride a trail that's just straight, it's boring. Like you
Right.
want, like, it's not the trail that, so you like figuring out how to add some unnecessary turns to it
Yeah.
or unnecessary undulations or something to give a trail a little bit of character, so it's not just a straight line where it
Right.
doesn't need to be turny. Like
Right.
that can
Right.
be really tricky.
Yeah. And I found also like trying to make the turns big enough for the speed. That's, I think, the thing I was talking about earlier is like, and when you mentioned afterwards the speed, it kind of really made me think about it, is like we would put in some turns and it would be like, as you were walking, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be really cool. But then once you're actually riding it at trail speed going down, you're like, this is just way too tight. So you gotta like maybe like turn those 4 twisty turns into 2 bigger twisty turns.
I think another thing that a lot of people disregard is line of sight while you're riding. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to like put a turn really close to a big tree going around it on the outside, but that big tree is obscuring your like vision quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you took that and then just pushed it out by like 5 feet, like if you can, like generally you can see through that turn a lot better and you're going to have a lot more flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now instead of like using trees as like slalom poles that you're trying to slalom around, I almost do the opposite where I see like a big tree and that's where the outside of the turn is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. So cut on the inside of it then.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. What what's your let's maybe switch gears a little bit as far as riding then. So is your riding style more like you enjoy the techie chunky stuff, or you insta like the more flowy or equal opportunity?
I anything that's not endurance.
Yeah.
I really like anything that challenges me in a technical way.
Uh-huh.
So it could be like a techie climb, as long as it like doesn't last too long. Like if it's like if I can see the top, like yeah, like that's fun. So I think anything that's skill based is generally what I like. So generally more natural stuff, but coming from a dirt jump background, I like to find flow in technical sections.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you're asking me which do I prefer, it's hard because I kind of like a hybrid.
It's a hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Like I think the best trails are the trails that are um they're natural trails with some man-made features to help you carry speed through some slow sections.
Mm-hmm.
They're not flow trails, they're not jump trails, they're not downhill trails. They're kind of you're seeing them pop up more and more. They're kind of like this hybrid where they leave some stuff natural, but then they like build a nice berm to carry you up and over the next kind of flat natural bit to like the next like part. And I think
Yeah.
those are the trails I enjoy riding the most.
Yeah, it makes sense. Do you um do you notice that as your skill set gets better and better, that it's harder and harder for you to find enjoyment and maybe some stuff that you used to ride?
No, because like as one skill set is getting better, another skill set is getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not refining it and using that. So just by going back to an old skill, or like for example, like a lot of times in the winter, I'll like jump on my dirt jumper again and go ride skate parks.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to like ride skate parks all the time. Now I don't do much of that at all. So anytime I go back to a skate park, I have to like relearn. You have to be so much more precise with your wheel placement on a quarter pipe, and
Mm-hmm.
like when it's a very like square edge, like you have to be so much more precise. That takes me a little bit of time to like learn how to ride a hardtail again and learn how to like know where my wheels are. Once I figure
Mm-hmm.
that out, I can start having fun again. Um, but there's like a learning process in that, and like that kind of happens every year where like I learn some new things on my dirt jumper throughout the winter. Then I get back to springtime and uh, jump on my normal bike, and I can use some of those skills I learned on a dirt jumper in the summer.
So do you think that that people should be using a dirt jumper and like as part of learning how to mountain bike, like going out and riding like a BMX park or whatever you want to call
That's hard to say because like I don't want to tell people to go out and buy another bike.
it? Yeah.
And like learning, if you like learn to use your tool in different situations, like that's more handy than having a bunch of like very specific use tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely helpful, but I feel like dirt jumpers for a long time have been a very niche audience because like they're for the longest time we haven't had these like sick paved pump tracks in like every major city.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's becoming more worth it to get a dirt jumper, and there's definitely a lot of really useful skills you can learn from it. Like I still think the most underrated skill is pumping.
Mm-hmm.
And you will learn that if you ride a pump track.
Yeah, I actually didn't know how to pump until I rode a pump track. That's definitely I can 100% agree with you on that one.
Like,
and now I use it all the time, like mountain biking, like all the time,
Yeah, whether you're turning, jumping, or trying to get more traction, like you're pumping.
Yeah.
Like you come to like a off-camber route section that is slippery. Yeah, you might not realize that you're pumping it, but you're essentially unweighting your bike, which is what a pump is, and like kind of float over the off-camber routes to the next point you have traction, and then like you push into the ground more to get traction to get you over the next section. So like that, like pumping is not very cool looking. I mean, it is, but it's not like it's not flashy. It's not like learning how to bunny hop. But pumping is way, way more useful.
Yeah, I just didn't realize like how you could use it to actually gain speed and in lieu of pedaling, and especially in like situations where you are able to pump, usually you're not able to pedal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like I didn't realize that until I was doing a pump track, and you would, let's just say it's like a big clock, right? And by the time you got back around to like 10 o'clock, you're like just freaking mock Jesus. You're like actually having to use your brakes while you're, coming around 12. And where like beforehand, like maybe the first time I ever got to the pump track, I was getting to 6 o'clock and running out of speed, right? So then you like learn that, and you're on the trail now, and you come through some section that's like got dips like that, and instead of just losing your speed, you pump through it, and now you're coming out the other end like a rocket. And I just totally didn't even know that was a possibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where people don't realize how useful it is until like they experience it. Because like for a lot of New England trails, like you can mash over the rocks and roots, or you can pump your way through it. And a lot of times pumping is way more efficient, and you're not risking hitting your pedals and
that's what I was just going to say. That pedal strike is definitely like that's the thing that the pumping like saves you from, because if you're trying to pedal through those, unless they're like exactly the right space for the speed that you're going, there's a good chance that you're going to hit a pedal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially with how low bottom brackets have become.
Right, definitely. What do you enjoy about working with GT? That they're not one of the bigger name brands, so not everybody's super familiar with their bikes. Like when I was a kid, GT was a household name because of BMX was like the all there was. But now they're definitely not, they're not like a Yeti, you know what I mean, or a Santa Cruz or something.
Sure. Well, their parent company is now the same parent company as
right.
Santa Cruz.
So maybe they are.
Anyway, so I like working with like smaller. I mean, GT is not a small company, but on like if you're comparing it to like Specialized or Trek, yeah, they're smaller. So you kind of know the people who work at the company better. Like I'm really good friends with one of their main engineers before I started riding for GT. So just like having like a better, like a more what's the word? Just like a closer relationship with the company.
More like a
So for
family kind of environment.
exactly, and so like one of my like the people I talk to, like they're friends. They're not
Hmm.
just people who work at the company. And
Right.
I think that's like a lot of times you look at the people who have been with the GT. They've been with the GT for a long time.
Yeah.
Whether it's Tyler McCall, whether it's um, with
Hans Ray.
Masters, yeah, like a lot of these people have been with the company for a long time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're like they treat their like I'm kind of in this weird spot where I'm technically on the athlete side of things, but
Hmm.
um, so they treat their athletes with respect.
Hmm.
Like over like for example, um, when you get injured, sometimes there will be some contracts for different racers where they'll lose out on money if they're not competing.
Hmm.
Um, or if they, pandemic comes up, like they might not get that money. Like GT tends to treat their like riders like they're actual people.
Hmm.
They're so like I don't know what the other athletes' contracts are like, but generally like you hear about situations where like a rider like just they got a concussion and they're on the fence like, well, my next paycheck depends on whether I race or not. That kind of
Hmm.
takes that question uh out for you because now you're like, okay, what's best for me?
Hmm.
And it's probably to sit out and not do the race.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like YouTubers and racers are kind of like having a better relationship with companies now compared to like I would say a few years back that YouTubers were definitely a lot of companies didn't even really acknowledge them, and I think that maybe racers really felt like YouTubers were kind of dipping in their pockets or something.
Yeah, it's such a like weird thing because like I feel like I've kind of been like on both ends,
Hmm.
and I never really felt like I made it as a racer, and that's why like I was looking for other ways to make biking a living, even though I had like the skill set and I was
Hmm.
doing really well. Like I didn't have the networking skills to get those sponsorships, so I ended
Hmm.
up just paving my own path and started doing YouTube before almost anyone else was doing YouTube. So
Hmm.
I got lucky to be at the right place at the right time. But for me, I I look at it as racers prove the validity of a product.
Hmm.
Like, it kind of like, hey, this is what marketing says, but so and so also just went ahead and raced that bike and just won the World Cup or the EWS or
Hmm.
whatever race on that
Hmm.
bike. It shows that it's at least capable of doing what you hope it's capable of doing.
Right.
However, those athletes are spending a lot of time training and doing all these things to get to that level.
Right.
And not all of them have the bandwidth to also be able to play around on YouTube and make videos.
Right.
So, I don't know how Bernard Kerr is doing it. Like that guy's an absolute madman. Like, you know, top 5 at World Cups and still running a really good YouTube channel like that,
Hmm.
and a team and all the other things he has going on. Like that dude is an absolute madman.
Right.
But not every athlete has the like capacity to do that, and I don't
Right.
think all of them should.
Right.
I think it's good to have people who are pure racers and people who are more content creators. And the term that people used to use was lifestyle athletes, and there are plenty of um, professional skiers, professional mountain bikers who would do more photo shoots versus competitions. A lot of
Right.
times, these people still came from like a professional competition background. So now the question is more or less like, well, there's a lot of people on YouTube who aren't coming from a professional background in terms of competition creating
Hmm.
content. I think that's where a lot of athletes are like kind of confused. And I think the thing is like from a brand standpoint, you need people who are relatable. You need
Hmm.
people who can kind of like help, you know, a brand might have this product, but maybe the marketing didn't help get some of the points home. The YouTuber or the content creator is a little bit more relatable, can kind of like help do a better job explaining what some of those like strengths or weaknesses are, or just kind of like help bring, like there's a lot of companies that don't make products geared at athletes. They're just trying to like target people who just want to go out on the weekend and ride. And
right.
like there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Definitely.
So I think there's like a big spectrum, and you're trying to like touch different points.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. It's you could see that, like when I first started doing YouTube, there was definitely more of a apprehension to YouTubers, and I feel like that's changing. But I agree with you that the amount of time that it takes to be an amazing athlete, like next to like a few, superstars of some sort, like for the most part, you're not going to have time to run a YouTube channel. And the same way to like have a really successful YouTube channel, like you're not going to have enough time to like be the athlete to compete at that level. And there will be some anomalies, like, who you mentioned and whatnot. But for the most part, like, I feel like they're separate, and at the end of the day, they both have their place in helping companies sell their product. So it's cool to see that YouTubers are actually starting to get, some kind of like companies are understanding that they actually can help,
Yeah, I think there's some companies that still don't quite get it.
Yeah.
And I say this, I think a lot of the mountain bike media still doesn't quite get it. I think a lot of people who are photographers and whatnot are former racers, so they have like a bias towards the racing aspect or the competition aspect.
Yeah.
And I've found that like since I don't compete anymore, sometimes my, I guess, credibility is like called into question. And
That's
so yeah, I feel like the sport has revolved so much around racing that like it's hard to completely get away from that.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, and especially with younger kids now that are, social media is kind of built into them growing up, and it's not like somebody that maybe spent half of their career just having to race and not having to have any kind of social media presence, and now having to learn how to do that too. Like I feel like there's a little more pressure on racers now. Like, hey, you have to have an Instagram and a Facebook or a whatever that's like got a decent following to help promote even more. Where it's like before you only had to be like good at riding bikes,
I mean, one of the reasons why I started like doing social media was because I was, I was sponsored by a brand. Remember, I wasn't getting paid, so this was flow. But during conversation, they were talking about one of our top athletes on the team, who we went to Sea Otter, and he didn't post anything on social media or didn't do anything to help the brand. I was like, oh, that's interesting because I never really thought about that. Yada yada. Like this is like when I was still in my teens. So I felt like I was like I listened to everything that the owner said. I was like, I'm going to make sure I do that, and I did it. And then my sponsorship did get renewed.
Oh damn, that's hilarious, man. We're getting pretty close to 2 hours. I want to ask you something though. I've been thinking about it since we've been talking. You've talked about doing a lot of different content on your channel, and a lot of it different than the like how-to videos. Do you think that you might rebrand your channel to just be like Phil Metz, or like you think you're gonna stick with Skills with Phil?
I'm just gonna keep it Skills with Phil. It's at this point like it's just a name. It doesn't matter what you're really calling yourself. People like know how to find you. So like Maybe like it has like a detrimental effect down the like in terms of like people see that name and like, oh, I'm not going to watch that video because I'm not really into that kind of content. I don't know, but I don't really see myself rebranding that anytime soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely thought about it, but the channel name is so broad that like it doesn't say anything bike specific,
Yeah.
and it's just skills with me, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what skill I'm doing.
So it
Technically,
could be trail building skill or whatever it is.
yeah, depending on how you want to interpret that, like you can look
Right.
at it in many different ways.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, man. Right on, dude. How many people have you got on your all your social media telling you that you need to grow the big mustache back?
You know
The
what?
handlebars.
Not that many.
Not that many.
No.
People didn't lose their mind over it.
No, it kind of went away subtly, and not many people noticed. I was like, yeah, I was stoked that like I kind of let that fade away, and I got like I get more people telling me that I cut my hair. I'm like, dude, I cut my hair years ago.
People just didn't notice.
Yeah, I just like I only get like 1 or 2 hair or like 1 to 3 haircuts in a year, so it's like it gets kind of long, but not that long.
Right. Right on, man. Well, dude, it was super fun chatting with you, like usual. So I definitely had a good time and appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me, man. It's super good time catching up with you again. It's been way too long. You planning on going out to Sea Otter or Sedona this year?
Sedona I'm more interested in. Sea Otter I actually was supposed to go to this year, but literally the day of, like, I was like, I don't feel good. I tested positive for COVID, so I was like,
Oh no.
well, like I didn't really want to go anyway, so
Solve that problem.
but Sedona is something that every year, like because it's at the beginning of March, and we
Mhm.
still have like a ton, or like we're still like barely coming out of the winter at that point.
Mhm.
It always comes up so quickly. So by the time I think about Sedona, I haven't even made plans. It's too late.
It's too late. Well,
So
maybe I'll see you there this year then, huh?
yeah, well, I might be there. I might not. I'm Schrodinger's Phil.
Yeah, I should send you a reminder in like December or something like that. Remember, you want to go to Sedona. Well, like I said a minute ago, dude, I really appreciate you hanging out with me. All of you guys that have listened the whole time, I appreciate you guys as well. Hit subscribe if you're on YouTube. Maybe thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you are listening to the podcast, like I said, do a little download or subscribe button on there. That helps some kind of algorithm. I don't know how that works, but whatever. If you could write me a review over on Apple, that'd be sweet. I really enjoy going over there and taking a look at them. And last but not least, swing by Facebook or Instagram, give me a follow over there too. It helps my motivation stay high. So if you don't want to do any of that, that's rad. I totally understand. You only have to do one thing. And remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.